guys, welcome to another SATs preparation video. Today we're diving into the 2022 GPS paper. We're going to walk through the whole thing. I'm going to share with you all of my teaching tips and advice along the way, and we're going to get 4 marks together in this paper. So let's get started and go straight down to question 1. Guys, remember in the real test you get 45 minutes to do this, and it's 50 questions, 50 marks. Every question is 1 mark. Let's do this. So first one, underline the subject of the sentence below. Guys, just remember sentences go like this: subject, verb, object. We've got the subject here, which is our answer. The verb lives and the object see. So the subject is whale. Number 2, draw a line to match each word to its correct suffix. Okay, think about this. There's only 2 suffixes. We can just test them all. Childhood or childship? Childhood makes sense. Championhood, championship. That makes sense. Neighborhood, neighborship. Neighborhood. Some of them are quite funny. Friendhood or friendship? Friendship. And finally, memberhood or membership? Membership. So when you just say them out loud or say them in your head, explore all the options. That way it's really obvious you can't fall into a trap. Number 3, draw a line to match each prefix to the correct word to make a new word. So another drawing one here. So this time we've got 3 and 3, so it will just be 1 to each one. So let's try it. Uncover, enlarge, and frost. Now I know enlarge is a real word, so don't worry about the other 2. Why bother? Decover, defrost, definitely a word, and then discover. Now, if you really want to check, let's say you were stuck on N, you can do discover, dislodge, disfrost. If you did the bottom 2 first, you'd only be left with one option again, so nice and easy. Number 4, which sentence must end with a question mark? So in other words, which one is a question? The other ones must either be statements, commands, or exclamations. We can work it out. Let's read them all out, and then think about which ones could be questions. Shall we go around the fitness trail in the park? We could go tomorrow if you like. What I really like is the rope bridge. Let me know what you would like to do. Okay, last one's a trap. Great trap, because it sounds like a question, but it's not. It's actually just a statement. Let me know what you'd like to do isn't actually a question. The other person might respond, but it's not a question. What I really like is the rope bridge is a very obvious statement. There's no question there. Now these 2, you might say this one out loud like a question. We could go tomorrow if you like, but it written down like this, it's not inherently a question. Again, it's just a statement. I'm just stating that we could go tomorrow if you like. The top one, however, is obviously a question. Shall we go around the fitness trail in the park? Question mark. You would expect a response from that one. Number 5, which sentence is punctuated correctly? So that means we've got to pay attention to everything, guys. We can get rid of things that are just obviously missing, right? Like full stops, capitals, whatever. Nevertheless, we are going on Saturday. Nevertheless, we are going on Saturday. That comma seems very odd. I don't think that's the answer. Finally, I think I understand what you mean. Okay, this is a fronted adverbial. I think I understand what you mean as a main clause. That looks good. Let's check all of them. Considering all of his efforts, the result was disappointing. Again, this comma just isn't needed. And at the last count, there were 20 people. So 3 of them have got very weird commas involved. And this one is an understandable comma because this is actually a main clause. And therefore, this is a fronted adverbial. So there we are. Bit of common sense, guys. Reading them just kicks in and helps sometimes. Which sentence uses commas correctly? The band will perform at concerts in Belfast, Manchester, Birmingham, Nottingham and Sheffield. I know that's wrong because we don't have the comma there. In fact, I'm just going to skip to see if any others do that. I'm not too sure. Let's read them. The children could choose to play netball, cricket, hockey or tennis. That looks okay. Owls, badgers. Okay, that's missing a comma here clearly, so it's wrong. Painting, drawing, sculpture and printmaking were all options on the art day. Again, don't need this comma here after the end of the list. So go back to my gut feeling. Is this one? This one's fine. It uses the commas correctly. You don't need a comma between the last 2 items. Good. Number 7. Again, which sentence is punctuated correctly? So we're looking at brackets this time, as you can see. In other words, which one's got the brackets in the right place? Add 1 ounce around 1 tablespoon of yeast to your bread mix. Now, without any expression, it sounds very weird. How do I think it's supposed to sound? Well, I think it's supposed to sound like this. Add 1 ounce, around 1 tablespoon, of yeast to your bread mix. In other words, I think the main clause is add 1 ounce of yeast to your bread mix. So sometimes identifying the main clause helps you therefore go ahead and identify what's supposed to be in brackets. So actually, the third one is going to be correct because the around 1 tablespoon is extra information to explain roughly what 1 ounce is if you don't know. Which sentence expresses the greatest certainty? This is a question on modal verbs. Modal verbs show possibility, right? And some modal verbs show a higher possibility than others. So the modal verbs in this question are may, might, will, and should. I don't even really need to read the sentences, to be honest with you, to know which one is showing the most certainty, right? May happen, might happen, should happen. Will is like, well, it's almost definite at that point, isn't it? That's the highest probability, the greatest certainty. Number 9, insert a pair of commas. Guys, when it says pair, please insert 2, okay? So many children just put 1. A pair of commas in the correct place in the sentence below. The African elephant, the largest land mammal in the world, can weigh up to 6.6 tons. Identify the main clause. The African elephant can weigh up to 6.6 tons. I know that's the main clause, therefore I can put a pair of commas around the extra information here in the middle. Done. Also important to note that you have to do your punctuation properly. I've seen kids do their commas like this, really lazily like that, and it's kind of looks like a bracket, or it could be an apostrophe. They don't get the marks. So you have to make them really clear. Put it where a comma goes. If anything, my comma's a bit high on this last one. If that was you in the paper, you'd get it right on the line. Make it a proper bit of punctuation, or you will lose marks. What does the word them refer to in the sentence below? A pronoun question, right? Them is a pronoun. Although deserts are very dry, a rich variety of plants and animals can survive in them. Well, I think quite clearly we're still talking about the deserts, right? We're saying that plants and animals can survive in deserts, despite the fact they're very dry. Nice, easy question. Okay, number 11. Circle the verb form, the correct verb form in each underlined pair to complete the passage below. These ones, guys, honestly, to me, are just common sense. Just try them both and which one sounds right. William Shakespeare, the famous writer, was born, he's not is born, that means it's happening right now, was born in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1564 and later moved, not will move, again, that makes it sound like it's going to be in the future, later moved to London where he will become, there's a possession here with this future tense, it's all in past tense, became an actor. Even today, Shakespeare's plays are performed around the world. Do you see how the tense switched? This was all about him in the past, and now it's saying even today, so in the past, the present tense now, Shakespeare's plays are performed, not just performed, because that's kind of simple past tense still, around the world. So good question, really. Number 12, draw a line to match each word below to its antonym. Antonyms are words of opposite meanings, guys. So synonyms have meanings that are the same. Antonyms have words meanings that are opposite. So what's the opposite of near? It's going to be far, isn't it? What's the opposite of cold? It's going to be hot. The opposite of distant is close. Distant means far away. Close means here. And warm and cool. The biggest trap here is this one, because you might have read that as close, like to close a door. Just remember that words do have different meanings sometimes. They can be spelt the same. Got those homophones and homonyms, but have different meanings. So just consider all of the meanings of a word to avoid traps. Insert a semicolon. So semicolons look like this into the correct place in the sentence below. Guys, semicolons link two related clauses together. Nice and simple. The suitcase was heavy. The box was lighter but more awkward to carry. I think just reading it identified that this is one complete idea. That's a sentence. The suitcase was heavy. And here is another sentence. The box was lighter but more awkward to carry. You might say there's another sentence here after the conjunction, but you wouldn't just have it. It's not a main clause. More awkward to carry isn't a main clause. This is one sentence with the coordinating conjunction doing a good job there. However, we've got nothing between these two. So it makes sense that my semicolon goes here. Number 14. Write the contracted form of the underlined words in the boxes below them. Sometimes it's just the language. If they just said, make these words have an apostrophe, you'd probably be all right. Contracted means shortened. So in other words, use an apostrophe to turn these two words into one. So was not becomes wasn't. You need to have your apostrophe there, guys, really clearly. I suggest not joining on these ones because it just makes it more likely you'll get it wrong. Just don't join. He had been waiting, so he'd. See, if when I join, it's more tempting to join underneath the apostrophe, and you will actually potentially lose a mark for that. So just don't join. It is good to see you is going to be it's with an apostrophe standing for it is. All right, so a little tip there about joining. Sometimes it can cause you to lose marks. Number 15, what is the word class of the underlined words? Okay, I have two brothers. Brian is older and Stanley is younger than me. Okay, what are we finding out here? Well, he's describing the relationship between his age and his brother's age, isn't he? These are describing words. It's describing Brian, and this is describing Stanley. So describing words are adjectives. Now, if you weren't too sure of that, you can probably get rid of the other ones anyway. It's not a noun. Nouns are people like Brian and Stanley. Okay, things, places. It's definitely not a noun. An adverb describes a verb. There's no action here. It's not describing a verb, and a verb is an action. And these aren't verbs. They're not actions. They're just describing the brothers. Number 16, insert a dash in the correct place in the sentence below. So again, just read it out loud or read it in your head. Obviously, you can't read it out loud in the test. And just put some expression in it. You'll hear it. The story was exciting. It was full of action and adventure. So it felt like there should be a conjunction here, didn't it? The story was exciting because it was full of action and adventure. Well, that's exactly where we're going to put the dash. So obviously don't do what I've just done there and put it in the wrong place. You've actually got to put the dash in the correct place right there. Nice and easy. Number 17. Which sentence is the most formal? I really hate these questions, guys, because, you know, who decides what's formal and what's not? It's quite a hard thing to define. But the tests always make it easy enough to weed out the three really informal ones. Firstly, it's quite informal to use apostrophes and contractions. So I can get rid of these two straight away. Look, they've got isn't and let's. We wouldn't use them if we were being formal. I'm down to these two. Do you fancy coming with us to the park? It is essential that we remember our water bottles. Quite often, the use of really nice vocabulary just gives it away. Do you fancy isn't a very formal way of saying, would you like to? Is it really? It's quite informal. So they're always quite obvious, those ones, if you just read them and think, what's the poshest sentence? Circle the two words that are synonyms of each other. So we said earlier, didn't we? Synonyms are words that mean the same. So we're looking for words that mean the same. Let's read it through. The school will supply all meals during the trip. If parents wish to provide children with additional drinks, they may do so. Something jumped out at me here because there was the same verb happening, but it was said differently. The school will supply all of the meals during the trips. And then this sentence is basically saying, but if parents want to supply their own stuff, they can. But they didn't use the word supply. If parents wish to provide children with additional drinks, they may do so. So those verbs jumped out at me at doing the same job, but slightly different words. Those questions can be really hard, guys. They take a bit of experience. And you just got to read the sentence a couple of times, see what jumps at you. Number 19, label each of the clauses as main clause or subordinate clause. Remember, main clauses make sense by themselves. You could take them out of the sentence and they are one complete idea. Subordinate clauses rely on the main clause. They don't actually make sense by themselves if you said them out loud. So let's do it. Let's just say them by themselves. After they'd been for a swim, that doesn't make sense, does it? That's clearly a subordinate clause because it feels unfinished. The boys had a drink. Okay, I could say that to you and it would be a complete sentence by itself. Because they were very thirsty, it needs more, doesn't it? Okay, subordinate. Another massive clue, subordinate clauses start with subordinate conjunctions. Nice and simple. After and because are conjunctions. Number 20, insert a pair of dashes in the correct place in the sentence below. A pair of dashes, guys. So like the pair of commas, but a pair of dashes. It's actually the same question because pairs of dashes, commas, and brackets can do the same thing. They can be replaceable, interchangeable. The Caspian Sea, which is a saltwater lake, is the largest inland body of water in the world. Okay, I'm looking again for the main clause. It's clearly going to be wrapping around the sentence because I've got a pair of dashes. So it starts here. The Caspian Sea is the largest inland body of water in the world. That makes sense by itself. Read it out loud. The Caspian Sea is the largest inland body of water in the world. Okay, which means which is a saltwater lake is my extra information. So put my dashes in. Done. All right, don't put commas in by accident. I've seen that happen, or brackets. If it says dashes, use dashes. Insert a colon in the correct place in the sentence below. So colons are used to introduce clauses or words or phrases, okay? So they're very similar to semicolons, but you've got to have this idea of introducing. Many fossils are not as big as people think. That's a complete clause by itself, isn't it? My gut feeling straight away is that the colon goes here. Some are so small that you need a microscope to see them. It clearly goes here just from the reading. Many fossils are not as big as you think. It's introducing, okay, well, how big do people think they are then? Or how big are they? Some are so small that you need a microscope to see them. It kind of explains the first clause, right? That's what the colon's doing, introducing that explanation. Number 22, draw a line to match each sentence to its description. Use each description once. Jake was cycling, Jake cycled, Jake is cycling. So we've got two that end in ing. That's a massive clue, by the way. We've got an action in progress in the present, an action in progress in the past. Well, look, Jake is cycling means it's present tense. And that's the only one that even says present, so it has to be that one. Now we've got these two. Jake was cycling, Jake cycled. They're both in the past tense, but one, it makes the verb sound like it's in progression because it ends in ing. That makes it the progressive version of that tense. And one just uses the simplest version of that verb form, cycled. So this is just an action in the past, whereas this one is an action in progress in the past. Very weird way of saying it's the past progressive tense. Ugh, don't get me started on that. Anyway, number 23. Which option is punctuated correctly? Let's just read them all and just weed out ones that are clearly wrong. All right, these questions are usually more obvious than you realise. Like, look at the second one straight away. My eyes are just drawn to this full stop with and then not a capital. It's obviously not right. He is famous for his innovative music, : That suggests it's introducing what that innovative music is. A mix of recorded noises, traditional instruments and songs. That seems absolutely perfect to me, and a lot of kids would just be confident at that point, but why not just check for the sake of it? He is famous for his innovative music, : A mix of recorded noises, traditional instruments and songs. Okay, that's wrong because of the list. And then this one, look, we've got a comma, then we have a pair of brackets. It's punctuated wrong. So that clarifies and confirms my thoughts on the first one. It is good to check, guys. I've seen a lot of kids who are just overly confident with an answer, and actually if they just checked the other options, they might not have made a mistake. Underline the subordinate clause in the sentence below. The subordinate clause starts with a subordinate conjunction. It's as simple as this. It's the bit that doesn't make sense by itself. When the crowd heard the clattering sound, they gasped in astonishment. They gasped in astonishment is clearly a main clause, which leaves this part as my subordinate clause. Pretty easy. Number 25. Use the information in the box to complete the sentence below with a relative clause. So relative clauses, guys, start with relative pronouns, the most common ones being who, which, or that. So let's see if we can do it. My grandma, and we've got some information, went on holiday to Spain. So we need to show that my grandma loves traveling. So my grandma, who, we don't want to say which or that would be very rude for a person, who loves traveling, went on holiday to Spain. Guys, worth noting that you would not get a mark if you started that with a capital W, because it's the middle of a sentence and it is a GPS paper, so you do have to punctuate things correctly. You also wouldn't get a mark if you spelled loves or traveling wrong, because it's right there to copy, and again, it's a GPS paper. The S stands for spelling, so please be aware of those things. The amount of children I've seen over the years that lose marks, they knew that they had the knowledge, but they just didn't punctuate their sentence properly. It's crazy. Number 26. What are the word classes of the two underlined words in the sentence below? The erosive force of the sea erodes the coastline. So it's the same word family, but used differently. Well, erosive is describing force, isn't it? The erosive force. That's an adjective. So it's one of these two. And erodes the coastline. This is an action word. It's showing us what it's doing. So it's a verb, which means that is my answer. Simple as that. Number 27. Insert the correct punctuation into the sentence below. What time does the concert start? Whispered Dad as we took our seats. Clearly some speech going on here, right? There's a question there. What time does the concert start? So we're going to have to get a lot of this punctuation right. It's given us the capital letter. I'm going to start my speech here. So clear inverted commas. What time does the concert start? Question mark. And then end my speech with clear inverted commas. Make sure your end punctuation goes inside the speech marks. Whispered Dad as we took our seats. I would put a comma here. Okay. Whispered Dad as we took our seats. And that's where you get your mark. So quite hard, those ones. You could argue it doesn't need a comma there. That's often what causes confusion on this question and causes people to doubt whether it's right or not. Number 28. What is the sentence below? This is a really hard question because it's a trick. It says, Safia asked the teacher which page we had to read. And a lot of kids go, it's a question. It said they asked the teacher. But this sentence isn't a question though, is it? This actual sentence, which is telling us that someone asked a question, isn't a question. It's just a statement. If you tell someone something, a fact or opinion, it's just a statement. And the statement is, Sophia asked the teacher which page we had to read. You wouldn't end that in a question mark, would you? Okay, so think of it that way. It's just a statement. It's not a command because it's not telling you to do something. It's not an exclamation. Exclamations start with what or how, and usually you can just hear the difference in the way they sound. They'd end in an exclamation mark. It's just a statement. Number 29. How does the use of the passive in this second sentence affect the way the information is presented? This is the weirdest question I've ever seen in my life because passive voice and active voice is often a thing that children struggle with, but you don't actually need to know anything about it to answer this question. You can just use your common sense. Watch this. Number 1, Max dropped the red bucket. Number 2, the red bucket was dropped. Doesn't mention Max this time. So look at these. It does not who dropped the bucket. That's true. Do I know it's the answer? Maybe not, but I can get rid of the other 3. Watch. It shows that the action happened in the past. I already knew that. Remember, this is about how does it affect the way it's presented. Basically, how does it change what the first sentence already tells us? Well, they both tell us it's in the past, so it doesn't change that. It was an accident. Neither of them tell us whether it was an accident or not. It does not say why the bucket was dropped. Neither of them say why the bucket was dropped. So you can answer this with common sense. The only thing that actually is different now is the fact that it doesn't say who dropped the bucket, but it does in the first one. So there you go. We're going to come on to active and passive a bit later because it comes up in the test. I'll actually teach you a bit about it. Number 30. Circle the 4 nouns in the sentence below. The strength of the wind made the trees in the forest sway and bend. Now, nouns are things, remember, so people often find wind, trees, and forest really easily, and then they struggle. You can have abstract nouns as well. There is an abstract noun in this one, which is strength. Strength is a noun. It is a thing. It's just not something you can hold, okay? But it is a noun. It is an abstract noun. So there's the 4th one. Tricky one. Circle the possessive pronoun in the sentence below. Okay, a pronoun replaces the proper nouns, the names of things, and if it's possessive, it shows belonging. So the house next to ours, which belongs to Mrs. Green, is for sale. Well, it's ours. Okay, it's showing possession. The house next to ours, as in the one that we own, the house that we own, ours. Nice and simple there. Number 32. The teacher wants to write a sign to remind the children to turn the lights off. Write the command that the teacher might use on the sign. Remember to punctuate your answer correctly. So there's lots of different answers you can put for this. Let's go for something simple. A command needs to start with a verb, a bossy verb, we call them. The proper name is imperative verb, but I teach them as bossy verbs. So let's start with a bossy verb. Let's tell them to do something. And let's just keep it simple. I'm just literally going to write this. Turn the lights off. Turn the lights off. Full stop. Now, most kids find that fairly easy. They just forget to punctuate it. They won't do a capital T, or they won't do a full stop, or they'll spell lights wrong, even though it's right there. So just be careful of all that because it can lose you a mark. So it starts with a bossy verb. It's a command. Done. Number 33. Circle the relative pronoun. Remember I said relative clauses start with relative pronouns, which are usually who, which, or that. Okay, so look at this one. The children who were going swimming had their lunch earlier than we did. Who is the relative pronoun there? Okay, if I was putting commas in, it would go there and there for my relative clause, which is there. So lots of things you can draw of that, but who is the relative pronoun? So we've circled it. Number 34, circle the subordinating conjunction in the sentence below. So again, going back to knowledge from before, subordinate conjunctions are used to start subordinate clauses, the bit that doesn't make sense in the sentence. So here's our main clause. We can play rounders or cricket, and here's my subordinate clause. Since it's sunny today, doesn't make sense by itself. Therefore, the starting word is my subordinate conjunction, since. It's a conjunction, and it starts the subordinate clause. Some of these things, when you start to compound your knowledge of stuff, it becomes really easy. Right, active and passive voice. Here we go, let's do it. It says, rewrite this sentence below in the active. Remember to punctuate your answers correctly. So very quick, very quick demonstration of active and passive. When we write a sentence normally, it's typically in the active. We go subject, verb, object. Now, if I want to swap these around to change the way the sentence sounds, I can do that, but the verb form might change slightly as well. So let's try and make up a sentence quickly. Mr. Price defeated Mr. Stevens. Okay? So 2 teachers battling, me and Dylan. Mr. Price defeated Mr. Stevens. Subject, verb, object. If I want to swap them around, but still show the same thing happened, I can't just say Mr. Stevens defeated Mr. Price because I've changed the meaning of the sentence now. I want to keep the idea that he beat me. So I need to put this. If I want to start with me, I'm going to have to put Mr. Stevens was defeated by. So was defeated by Mr. Price. Does that make sense? So when I want to switch the subject and the object around in the sentence, we do have to consider how it might change the way the verb is presented. And the key word here to know it's in the passive voice is the word by. We almost always use the word by at the after a verb when we use it this way around. Okay, so this one here is in the passive already. The dog was fed by Bill. All right, and it's telling us to switch it back to the active. So in other words, get the subject and the object and just switch them back around. So we want Bill to come first and dog to come later, but we don't want to change the meaning of this. Most kids write, Bill was fed by the dog, which is very funny when we're marking it. But that actually changes the meaning of the sentence. I still want to show, I want this image still of the dog receiving food from Bill. I just want to switch the order in which they're in the sentence. So I'm going to do it like this. The dog was fed by Bill becomes Bill fed the dog. There you go. There's my quick lesson on active and passive. I hope that makes sense, guys. You just switch the subject and object round and just change the verb appropriately to make it still have the same meaning. Don't change the meaning by not changing the verb. There's going to be another question like this later, so we can come back to it. Number 36, Which option makes the sentence start with an adverbial? If it starts with a fronted adverbial, because it's at the front of the sentence, it'll end in a comma. Straight away, I know it's this one, just like from common sense, but let's just check it. It was noisy and crowded, but, no, that's not an adverbial. The photographer arrived while, no, not an adverbial. With big smiles on our faces, comma, that's an adverbial. It doesn't make sense by itself. And the last one, the whole class were ready, so we lined up. That's just, it's not an adverbial, it's part of the sentence. Hopefully that one's fairly self-explanatory. Let's move on. Number 37. Complete the sentence below with an appropriate subordinating conjunction. Again, back with the subordinate conjunctions. So remember, we want a conjunction that can start a sentence to start this subordinate clause. Now, the best bit about this one is if you just dive in and go, oh, I know some subordinate conjunctions. Let's just put because, that will do, move on. Then you won't get the mark because it doesn't actually make sense. It needs to be appropriate, which in other words means it makes sense in the sentence. It says something, it rained all afternoon. The picnic was a success. You wouldn't normally attribute a successful picnic with raining, right? So clearly I need one of those conjunctions that actually shows opposites. So I'm not going to use because anymore. I'm actually going to use a different word. I'm going to use although. Although. Because this means, it also means despite the fact that it means the same thing. Although it rained all afternoon, the picnic was a success. So although this bad thing happened, this good thing still happened. So it shows opposites. Because doesn't do that. So be careful with that. Number 38. Circle the coordinating conjunction. So we've just had subordinating conjunctions. Now we've got coordinating conjunctions. Let's have a look at all the conjunctions in here. I started drawing a car, but then I changed my mind because I had a better idea. Well, which one is a coordinating conjunction? Well, if you know what a subordinating conjunction is, and you know that because is a subordinating conjunction, then by definition, you know this one is coordinating. Just to make it clear, coordinating conjunctions can only be used between two clauses. They can't go at the start of sentences. They don't make sense. Whereas subordinating conjunctions can, just like we did in the last question. Although can start a sentence, it's a subordinate conjunction. Number 39, circle the preposition. Big clue there, prepositions give us a sense of where something is. The bird flew above the trees. There's my first preposition, telling us the location, the position of the birds. The children sang many songs in their concert. Not after their concert, not before their concert, in their concert. There's the prepositions. We're getting there, guys. Number 40. We're on time as well. Remember, we have 45 minutes for this test. We're getting there. Complete each sentence with the simple past of the verbs in the boxes. Ugh. If you forget what simple past means, just at least think past tense, because the chances are you'll still get it right. Simple past just means the simplest version of that verb in the past tense. In other words, just use one word to show it. So don't say, I was doing my homework on the computer. More simple. I did my homework on the computer. So you're thinking of the simplest way to say that verb in the past tense. To choose. I chose to do a project about horses. Not I was choosing or I had chosen. They're not simple. Keep the one word for simple. To begin. What's the simple past tense version of begin? Today I begin. Yesterday I began. Okay, so that's it. Just keep simple means one word. Insert a hyphen into the correct place in the sentence below. Hyphens join two adjectives normally together, or nouns sometimes, to create one compound word. So we're basically saying the two words, they might have their own meaning if used separately, but we want to combine them into this one new word that has its own meaning. Let's have a look. We were very busy in the run-up to the school play. Hopefully you can see that run-up becomes one idea. Now, let me quickly explain it to you. Run has its own meaning, and actually without the hyphen, you could argue that if you run up to something, if I said go and run up to your parents, that's not the same as this, is it? That's a very, very different meaning. Go and run up to your parents. That means run, the action of running, and up to is like a preposition, go towards them. This doesn't mean that. It means the time before. So to make it clear to our reader that we're not talking about running up to wherever the school play is, we put a hyphen in here to combine these into one idea, the run-up. Number 42. Tick one box in each row to show whether the sentence is written in standard or non-standard English. In other words, does it make sense or not? Is it lazy speak or is it real proper English? I were going to keep the picture to show you. No, it should be I was, shouldn't it? So that doesn't make sense. We was helping to design the new school building. That one should be were, so they're the wrong way around. That's wrong. He doesn't know nothing about football. It's a double negative, isn't it? He doesn't know anything about football. would be the correct bit there. So that's also wrong. Are they all wrong? I have done all the washing up. Okay, that's fine. I have done all the washing up. That makes sense. You wouldn't say I have did all the washing up. So that's an interesting one. It says tick each box, and I put a cross in them, so don't do that, guys. Tick, tick, and tick. Be really clear to read the instructions so you don't make any mistakes there. Add a different prefix to each word to form its antonym. A different prefix to make its antonym, opposite meaning. Obey, disobey, right? What's the opposite of tolerant? I'm tolerant, but maybe someone else is intolerant. Okay, you could be intolerant to a food, or you could be intolerant towards other people. I'm patient, but you are impatient. And that one's I am. Quite often confused with IN. There you go. Number 44. What is the grammatical term for the underlined words in the sentence below? Guys, I actually don't like this question, and maybe another time I'll explain why. But let's just do the answer. The majestic lioness under the shady tree watched her cubs. So we've got a lioness, and it's been very much described by all of the words around it with a determinant at the start. By definition, then, this is a noun phrase. A noun phrase is when you have a group of words that describe a noun. Simple as that. Often starts with a determiner, like the, or a, or an. It's not a main clause. We can go away and eliminate other ones. The majestic lioness under the shady tree, what? It's not a complete idea, so it's definitely not that. Definitely not a subordinate clause, doesn't start with a subordinate conjunction. And it's also not a fronted adverbial. Fronted adverbials have a comma at the end of them, and again, don't make sense by themselves. So I can get rid of the other answers if I was stuck. The reason I don't like it, by the way, is because under the shady tree is a prepositional phrase. The majestic lioness, I would say, is the noun phrase. But there we go. Maybe I'm just wrong and I don't know something about how prepositional phrases can be part of noun phrases, but that's what I've always understood. Anyways, we still get it right, so it doesn't matter. Tick one box in each row to show if the statement about the apostrophes is true or false. What do we know about apostrophes? They can show possession, right? And they can also be used for contracted verbs. Now, in this one, it's just all about possession. It's about plural possession or not. So the boys' lunch was delicious. The reason that apostrophe is after boys is because it means there's more than one boy. So there is only one boy is false. Gina put out the cat's food. Again, because it's after the cats, it means there's more than one cat and the food belongs to more than one of them. There is more than one cat, true. The girls' party is this afternoon. Now we've got the apostrophe after the word girl with an S on the end. So the fact that the noun is just girl means there's one girl. There is more than one girl, false. There's one girl. And the tree's leaves were green. Hopefully we're getting the hang of this now. It means there's more than one tree. There is only one tree, false. Hard question, that one, because you had to also then think about the true or false statement. Very odd. Anyway, number 46, we're nearly there. Rewrite the sentence below in passive. We learned about passive and active. Subject, verb, object. Swap the verb and object around. That's what we've got to do. The children grew vegetables. Right, we've got the subject and the object. I want it to be vegetables and then children. I'm not going to say the vegetables grew children. That would change the meaning of the sentence and be quite funny. I still want the children growing the vegetables, but I want to say the word vegetables first. So I'm going to put vegetables. I want to use the word by, remember. Were grown by. Were grown by. Now remember, it has to be were, not are, because it was grew is in the past tense. So you've got to be really careful with these little things. The vegetables were grown by the children. And that is it. If you just put children and didn't put the, it's still fine. It's still in passive. Vegetables were grown by the children, not vegetables are grown by the children. So just be careful, guys. And that's it. It's passive and active. Not so hard, really, is it, when you think about it? Number 47, insert full stops and capital letters into the passage below so that it's punctuated correctly. Great question. You might think it's easy, but kids often fall flat on this one. Frogs are amphibians. They live on land. Straight away, that's the end of a sentence right there, isn't it? Okay, I can just tell it goes on to something else. Frogs are amphibians. They live on land. I could stop there, but I actually have got a coordinating conjunction here, which means I'm going to carry on. They live on land, but lay their eggs in water. Okay. It clearly goes on to a new sentence here, so there's my next full stop, capital letter. Now this is the trap. Their eggs are called frog spawn during the winter. Oh, that wouldn't make sense, would it? Because that's the end. That would be the end of the idea. So we can't possibly put a comma here. I must have to rethink this. Their eggs are called frog spawn. Aha. During the winter, comma. This is an adverbial. Frogs hibernate at the bottom of ponds or in compost heaps. Full stop. Classic trick. They actually write a question like this every single year that I've seen in the SATs, where you get this fronted adverbial that's not been punctuated that sounds like it could go with the sentence before. I think I did a video on this recently. Go and check it out on our YouTube channel. Right, 3 questions left, guys. And we're well under time, 34 minutes. We've got 10 minutes. Circle the 3 adverbs in the sentence below. Because it was raining hard, the driver was unable to see clearly and almost crashed his shiny new car. Easiest way to do this, adverbs modify verbs. They tell you how or when the verb happened. So find the verbs, or raining is a verb, see is a verb, and crashed is a verb. You could say what was is a verb as well, but it's not going to help us with this sentence. Go with the more obvious ones. Okay, how or when was it raining? Well, it was raining hard. There's your first one. How or when could they see? Well, they could see clearly. That's how they could see. How or when did they crash? Did they crashed? They almost crashed. All right. So those words all modify the verbs. 2 of them are after the verb. 1 of them is before the verb. But they're all adverbs. All right. So adverbs don't always end in ly like this one. Sometimes they don't. And that's often why these questions are hard. Number 49. We've got tick 1 box in each row to show which form of the verb is underlined in the sentence. So we've got had hoped, were rehearsing, and came. Now, watch this. I'm going to very quickly teach you this. We've got simple, progressive, and perfect. They're all in the past tense, so we can kind of ignore that bit and just think about what these words mean. Simple, I already told you, it's when it's one word, it's the simplest version. That's clearly the simple one. Progressive is when you use ing on your verb in the sentence to make it sound like it's still progressing, okay? So ing is in this one. And perfect tense is when you use the word had, has, or have before the verb to make it sound like it's been perfected, like it's done, it's completed. Nathan had hoped is perfect because of that reason. All right? Very, very bizarre bit of knowledge, I know, but there you go. Try and remember it like that. Simple one word, progressive ing, the other one is perfect. So if you can eliminate progressive and simple, then you know it's perfect tense by definition. Might be the easiest way. Last question, guys, number 50, and we've done this whole paper. I hope you've enjoyed coming on this journey. Guys, before I do number 50, can you just quickly hit that like button below the video, maybe leave us a follow, maybe even subscribe if you're not subscribed already, because we'd love to see more of you on our videos commenting in the future. So let's do number 50. Here we go. Circle the 2 determiners in the sentence below. Determiners determine how many of the noun, how much or what the noun is, okay? So in an hour, an is our first determiner. It's a very common determiner, like the, a or an are often taught as determiners. It determines the noun, which is hour. We will be getting on our train. There's the noun, and here is the determiner before it. It's a possessive determiner, often gets confused, and it's very, very, very linked to possessive pronouns. There's a massive overlap between possessive determiners, possessive pronouns. The biggest clue is that possessive determiners come before the noun that they're talking about, all right, rather than just being a pronoun. Oh, crikey. Isn't that hard? But that's it. Guys, we've done the whole paper in about 37 minutes or so, and I've explained everything along the way. Guys, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. If you want to know something, I didn't explain it well enough, or you just have more questions about it, I will get back to you in the comments as soon as I can. Best of luck for your SATs exams, whenever they are. And do stay tuned because we've got loads more videos coming out over the next week or two. In fact, we've got some daily videos coming out before the 2024 SATs if you're watching this in 2024. Guys, see you soon.